Welcome into the San Francisco 49ers Report. Chase Sr. here with you. And no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, as always, I greatly appreciate you for making today's show a part of your day. Who we're talking about on the program here today? We have a great update on Christian McCaffrey. The same can be said for George Kittle, who's dealing with a little bit of a hamstring issue. And we're going to do a deep dive on Brock Purdy. And I'm going to explain why how he played against Tampa Bay is huge for this Niners team moving forward. Let's first take a look at our sub count. This is the largest independently run Niners channel right here on YouTube, and we're closing in on another really special milestone of 150,000 subscribers. We are 845 people away from that number. I encourage you to lock us in, hit that sub button right now for daily and year-round coverage of the Niners. Anytime that I'm talking San Francisco football, I want this content and these shows to be as insightful, informative, entertaining, thought-provoking as possible, and I always want you to have a voice. So join the movement here today. As for the latest on running back Christian McCaffrey, we had talked so much about Kyle Shanahan managing his workload, making his season debut in Week 10 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the severity of the injury with him dealing with bilateral Achilles tendonitis, and we thought maybe San Francisco was going to ease him in, considering he led the NFL in touches last year, got a contract extension. They upped his average annual value to about $19 million per year, and they gave him guaranteed money, and they can't afford to mess around with Achilles tendonitis. Well, he played in 54 of 61 snaps against the Buccaneers, about 84% if my math is correct, even though I failed elementary algebra in college. And what's crazy about McCaffrey's performance against Tampa Bay, you could tell that at times he was a little bit winded, trying to catch his breath, trying to get his feet beneath him. He said it was the third time that he's worn a full set of pads over the last 8 weeks. Yet Christian McCaffrey still had more than 100 all-purpose yards. And his workload against the Buccaneers, very similar to how Kyle Shanahan and the Niners utilized him last year. It's hard to keep him off the field because he's so dynamic as a runner, as a pass catcher, but he's also so good with pass protection in trying to keep Brock Purdy clean in the pocket and upright. Now you look at the rushing numbers for McCaffrey. Not great. San Francisco did struggle to run the ball against that Buccaneers defense. Anytime you go up against Vita Vea, he takes up so much real estate and girth on the interior, right? And he's a load to handle. And so when you try to run it up the middle, you can have some issues. When you try to run it in general, especially against a stacked box, because Todd Bowles was blitzing so much and he utilized so many loaded fronts, you're just not going to find a lot of success on the ground. That's why Brock Purdy had one of the best statistically throwing and passing games of his career. So McCaffrey, he ran it 13 times, 39 yards, only 3 yards per carry along a 13. You didn't see the big chunk runs or the explosive runs. He looked pretty good in running the football. I thought at times maybe the cut ability wasn't as explosive. It didn't have the burst there because he's trying to come back off that injury. Also pretty telling how the Niners used him. All of his runs were to the outside. As you can see here with this chart, 6 attempts for 24 yards to the right side, 7 attempts for 15 yards to the left side. None of his runs were along the interior. All of his runs toward the right tackle, toward the left tackle. Is that because of the injury? Is that because of the loaded box? I think it's more so because of how Tampa Bay was playing the Niners, because they wanted to stop the run, blitz, and force Brock Purdy to beat them. As for how Christian McCaffrey fared in the air, this is that dual threat nature that the Niners have really missed. His diversity and versatility as a player, and just the mere threat that he poses as a pass catcher. Out of the slot, out of the backfield on wheel routes, it forces the defense to have to cover every blade of grass, and they always have eyes on him. And the Niners can use him on third downs. They can use him at any moment, running it, throwing it. And he's just so special with how he's able to impact the game, even when he doesn't have his hands on the football. And so he comes back after not playing at all up to this point, and has more than 100 all-purpose yards. He's targeted 7 times. He catches 6 of those passes for 68 yards and had one of the biggest plays of the game. The stutter-go wheel route out of the backfield in which he beat Levante David and Brock Purdy had pressure right in his face, was able to throw that ball with touch, a moon ball down that sideline to McCaffrey, who ran under it like a center fielder, and that was a massive play in that ball game. Now, all of that being said, you're probably wondering, Chase, what's the good news? The good news, anytime that you have tendonitis, you might feel good one day, feel awful the next. You might play well one game, then it flares up. Christian McCaffrey, according to head coach Kyle Shanahan, no lingering pain after playing against Tampa Bay. That is huge given the injury. Now this week, he was limited on Wednesday, but that's part of the workload plan. The Niners are going to be very careful with how he practices, when he practices, how hard he practices, because they're trying to manage the touches and the workload to have him ready for game day. So that's the portion of the show where we're talking about Christian McCaffrey. Still to come, some good news on George Kittle and some positive developments with Brock Purdy. First, you know what's a positive development? The Prize Picks app. Why? It's the best app in the daily fantasy sports industry. The best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. And when you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for all of your lineups. For instance, you think that Steph Curry will get more than 4 3-pointers next week? Anthony Edwards, more than 27 points. Brock Purdy, more than 263.5 passing yards. If that's the case, you choose more on those players. So the best way to win real money watching sports, which we obviously all enjoy. Some selections that we like for Niners Seahawks. Brock Purdy, more than 263.5 passing yards. Christian McCaffrey, more than 77.5 rushing yards. Geno Smith, more than 14.5 rushing yards. Again, get $50 when you play $5. All you need to do is plug in that link at the bottom of your screen, right along the ticker there. prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS. Coming out of that Buccaneers game, we saw how impactful George Kittle was in that game. The touchdown catch that he had from Brock Purdy, toe drag swag, the massive play on the pitch and catch from Purdy to Kittle, in which he was near the sideline and then was able to bust it upfield, pick up yards after the catch to really flip the field and help turn the momentum of that game. And coming out of that game, Kyle Shanahan had said, George Kittle, he has some hamstring irritation. Anytime I hear hamstring, I get a little bit worried. I injured my hamstring back during the summer. It still gives me issues from time to time. These soft tissue injuries are the worst because you might feel good, you re-aggravate it, or they just linger for a really long time. The good news for Kittle, Kyle Shanahan saying, not much concern about his availability against the Seahawks. He did not practice on Wednesday. I also want to pose this question here, and I want you to put your thinking hats on. Has George Kittle been the Niners' offensive MVP for 2024? And is he the player who the Niners could least afford to lose this year? Some of you might say Trent Williams because he protects the blind side of Brock Purdy, but given the injury to Brandon Ayuk and how the Niners' offense has struggled this year, how great George Kittle has been, and the role that he's played as a run blocker, pass catcher, picking up yards after the catch, creating separation, and being a go-to target for Brock Purdy in the red zone, if George Kittle were to get lost due to an injury this year, I think that would really hamper the Niners' offense more so than any player on that side of the ball. George Kittle is truly having another all-pro season, and last year in 2023, he was a first-team all-pro. Overall Pro Football Focus grade of 90. a receiving grade of 90.9. He has been targeted 52 times, and he's caught 43 of those passes. He has 560 yards, on pace for overtaking what he did last year. His 7 touchdowns lead all tight ends in the NFL. He has been sure-handed, only 1 drop, a passer rating when targeted of 135.1, 13 yards per catch. He is the best tight end in football and the best all-around tight end in football. And last year, you look at how his numbers stacked up with what he's doing this year. 90 targets, 65 catches, more than 1,000 yards, 15.7 yards per catch. So that number is down a little bit. But all of last year, George Kittle had 6 touchdowns. Going into Week 11, he already has 7. The 49ers cannot afford to lose Kittle in this game against Seattle or any game this year, because he really does play a pivotal role for this team in so many areas, not to mention he's the leader of this Niners offense and one of the faces of this team, because he's always injecting positivity for all of his teammates on this roster. Let's round out with this. If Brock Purdy continues to play like the way that he did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the San Francisco 49ers can contend with any team in the NFL. When the Niners couldn't run the football against Tampa Bay, they relied on the arm of Purdy. He balled out, and he was slinging it all over the yard. On that final drive, 4 of 5, got the ball back with 41 seconds left, marched the Niners right down the field, the only incompletion coming on that spike so that he could stop the clock for Jake Moody to connect on that field goal, just barely. The touchdown throw to George Kittle was an excellent play out of structure. The moon ball to Christian McCaffrey with pressure in his face, leading him down that sideline so that he could run under it like a center fielder. The touch there was beautiful, and Brock Purdy is the second quarterback since 1950 to have a passer rating of 100+ in 10 of his first 15 road games. It's pretty damn good if you ask me. And against the Buccaneers, he was asked to throw it a lot, 36 times. Oftentimes the Niners, they don't throw it that much because they're a balanced offense who Kyle Shanahan likes to run it about 50% of the time. 50-50, usually the split right there. Yet, because the Bucs were applying pressure, they were blitzing a lot, loading the box, Kyle Shanahan was forced to call passing plays. And Brock Purdy passed with flying colors. 25-36, 353 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, no turnovers at all. Yards per completion of 9.8 and a quarterback rating of 119.3. And against that Todd Bowles pressure, Purdy was awesome against the blitz. 18-22, 274 yards, 15 first downs included in those 18 completions. Those 2 touchdowns both coming against the blitz, and a passer rating of 148.9. And how about these numbers here? Some chat stats on Brock Purdy. He has the best completion this year. He has the best completion percentage this year, on throws of 15+ yards, 59.6%. It turns out he's not a check down merchant. He also ranks 9th among 468 qualifying quarterbacks over the last 15 years in that category. And the quarterback with the highest completion percentage in that group, Brock Purdy last year, when he completed 63.7% of his passes. If the 49ers are able to figure out their red zone problems, look out. It's going to give the defense some breathing room. It's going to give the special teams unit some breathing room, because if they simply score more points, you have some more wiggle room to make some mistakes elsewhere. And if the Niners can figure out how not to botch special team situations week in and week out, that's how this team can reach their fullest potential. I firmly believe that. And if Brock Purdy continues to play like that, Niners can beat any team in the NFL. Be sure to hit that subscribe button here on the Niners Report, approaching 150,000 subscribers. Really appreciate all of you for supporting the show as always.